We are going to start with another lecture of advanced performance management, and in this lecture we are going to deal with the concept of activity based management and activity based costing. It's a recent question which has been asked by APM examiner, right? So let's start with this. Let's see what we can do here. Let's move through the requirement first. Let's see what is the requirement. There are two basic requirements. The first requirement is respond to the CEO of the Griecy's instruction for the work on design cost allocation, that is for 13 marks, and introduction of ABM, that is for 7 marks, right? So approximately it's of 20 marks question, and 5 marks are for professional, 5 are professional marks, right? So let's move back to the question. Let's see what we can do here. Griecy Packaging manufactures two types of packaging containers for food distribution. The first one is plastic and the second one is non-plastic, right? Griecy supplies food supplies food manufacturers with a standard design containers, but also manufacture containers for specific client orders, which depends on the type of food being carried out. So they have a specific standard product, and then they are also offering a customized product to their customers. The plastic container market, which is the first product, right, is well established with all manufacturers producing similar sizes and types of product. So it means that probably we don't have multiple different type of options here, right? The market is competitive and all are producing a very similar product. The other container, which is the second product, this one, the other container market is a new with greater possibilities for different design for stacking and carrying purposes, right? The other containers market has arisen as plastic is seen as less attractive product due to difficulties in recycling it, right? Makes sense because of sustainability and all these things. Client often choose Griecy as its design department has a strong reputation for blending the client's existing brand and marketing into the packaging which designs for them, right? So this is basically their unique selling point, where they are excelling in terms of designing, right? Now, Griecy is a high volume producer. That means they are producing more products. Since the selling price of food container must be kept low in order to satisfy the needs of the food manufacturers, right? So that's why they are producing more and more output in order to reduce its cost per unit. The CEO wants to reinforce a strategy of cost leadership. Cost leadership means that the company is producing the output at the lowest cost, or we are the cost leader means we are producing product which are lowest in terms of cost at Griecy, and he wants to use and how he wants to do is he want to use activity based management to allocate cost more accurately and to identify non-value added activity. So these are two things which your CEO really wants to do. First, he wants to use activity based management to allocate cost more accurately. This is his first objective, right? Activity based costing for this one. And the second one is to identify non value adding activities. So these two things are something which basically your CEO wants to do, right? Now, and probably the requirements are same. You are supposed to focus on design allocation cost and introduction of ABM, right? Now, design allocation cost. The first department to be considered in the APM project is the first department to be considered in ABM project is the packaging design department, as it has been believed for some time that the current method of cost allocation is giving unrealistic results for the two product types, which is plastic and the other. So the management believes that they need improvement in cost allocation. The CFO absorb the cost of design. The CFO absorb the cost of design into the product cost on per unit basis. That means what we are doing, um, we are dividing total cost, total overheads or total cost with the budgeted production or budgeted output, right? This has involved simply allocating the total departmental cost based on the total number of units produced. That means total cost divided by total number of units. The CFO suspects that an activity based costing approach will yield different results because ABC allocates cost on the basis of multiple cost drivers. So the CEO believes that it's going to be different if the company switches to ABC, right? After a lengthy process of interviewing the finance and design department staff, a more detailed view of the work of the design department has been gathered along with its existing cost data, which you can see in appendix number 1. So we'll move to appendix number 1 later once we complete after completing this. As an initial step, the CEO would like to calculate. Now from here the requirement is starting. The CEO would like you to calculate and compare the overhead cost per unit allocated to both types of product from the design department using the current costing method and the activity based costing approach, and to analyze the results. Now what examiner really wants you to do, what CEO really wants you to do, okay, fine, let's read it completely and then we will discuss. For simplicity in its exercise and to highlight the difference between the types of container, the CEO has told you to assume that Griecy only produces one sort of product for each plastic and other. So we are not producing. The CEO wants you to believe that if we are talking about a plastic, we are just producing one type of plastic product, and if we are talking about others, we are only producing one simple type of the product. So we are not going to see multiple categories of product within the other container category, right? So that's basically what the CFO wants you to believe, right? Now let's reread the requirement and try to understand what examiner really wants us to do, because this requirement is of 13 marks, right? 13 marks. So 13 marks are a lot, right? The CEO would like you to calculate and compare. So you are supposed to calculate and compare the overhead cost per unit. What you have to calculate and compare? Overhead cost per unit allocated to both types of product from the design department using the current costing method and an activity based costing approach, right? So till now what you have to do, you have to calculate overhead per unit by using current method. You have to calculate overhead per unit by using activity based costing, and then you have to calculate and compare. Once you are done with this, you have to compare both, right? And to analyze the result, compare and analyze, right? What will happen if we probably switch to ABC, right? For simplicity in this exercise, you are supposed and to highlight the difference between type of containers. So that's some simple story. So this is basically what you have to do in 13 marks, right? Probably let's move to appendix number 1 and see what sort of complications are there. So in the design department, there are wages, staff training, allocated overheads, depreciation, intellectual property protection fees, right? And then from the perspective of activity based costing, activities of the design department has been highlighted as handling inquiries and preparing quotations for potential orders, that is 30%, initial design of packaging, that is 30%, material testing is for 10%, final design is 25%, intellectual protection is 5%. So roughly there are 1 2 3 4 5 cost drivers, right? So we have not read this appendix, but approximately there are 5 cost drivers. So by and large we can believe that Approximately 2 marks will be to calculate overhead per unit by using current method, and probably there will be 2 marks multiplied by each cost driver. There will be 10 marks roughly for the calculation of cost per unit under activity based costing, right? So apparently we are left with 1 mark, but of course 1 mark will not be there. So because generally whenever we start with preparing the calculations and everything, we generally allocate 2 marks, right? But I don't believe that 12 marks will be for calculation, so let's keep it simple. Simple in the sense, let's try to reduce the number of marks. So I believe 1 mark is for the calculation of current method, and probably roughly we can say 8 marks are for the calculation of overhead under activity based costing, right? So approximately we can reasonably believe that 9 marks are for the calculation purposes, calculation part, and probably 4 marks are for comparison and analysis, right? Or maybe 10 marks is for part A, and part A in the sense the first section, and probably 3 marks is for second section. But to be very honest, if you want to identify how much marks you should focus on while writing the answer, it should not be more than 4 5, not more than 4 5 marks, right? So that's basically the initial dissection of the marking scheme, right? So now we are moving towards the appendix, and let's see what's given there. Okay, so in appendix number 1, what we have is design department information for the year ended 30th June to 20x5, and what are the details. Existing data suggests that wages cost are 3060, staff training cost is 63, and then allocated overheads related to depreciation, intellectual property protection fees 221. So total cost is 3875, and lawyers and protection application fees is included in the 221. The question says that there are 6500 orders for plastic containers, and there are 1600 orders for other containers, right? Each order have an average of 400,000 units, and in this product each order consists of 187,500 units. So order size differs significantly because probably plastic is for standard size. Now activity based costing data, as we discussed, it has 1 2 3 4 5 different cost pools, right? So let's start reading it one by one. Handling inquiries and preparing quotations for potential orders, that is 30%. It relates to 13,000 inquiries or quotes per year, right? Then this is initial design packaging, it's 30%, relates to 8100 orders in the year, right? So where are the details of order, number of orders details are given. Number of order details are here, 6100 plus 1600. So it's approximately, not approximately, it is actually equals to 8100 orders, right? Then it says material testing and prototype preparation, that is just 10% done once an order is received. Final design done once a prototype is accepted by the client, that is 25%. And intellectual property protection, that is only applicable to other orders, 5%. So out of all these 100% cost, 95% is shared by both, while this 5% cost is only applicable to other orders, right? So and the number of inquiries are given, a number of orders are given. Then they are saying that material testing and prototype preparation done once an order is received. So probably this means that if a product has 6500 orders, like plastic has 6500 orders, probably we will We will do material testing and prototype preparation 6,500 times for this product, right? Because this is done once an order is received. So number of orders will be equals to the prototype preparation, right? Then they are saying final redesign done once a prototype is accepted by the client. So again, this is equals to the number of orders. Intellectual property protection, that only applies to other orders, right? So let's move to notes. Now these notes are extremely important. The total department cost actually is referring to this one, total departmental cost. Right, because this is existing cost data and this is the overall design department cost data, right? So the question is saying total department cost except intellectual property protection fee, which is C, where except intellectual property protection fee, C note number 2, is to be allocated using staff time, as this drive rest of the cost in the department. So they are saying that total department cost except intellectual property protection and fee. So right, so this is the total department cost and they are saying except for intellectual property protection fees, except for intellectual, let me try to highlight in a different manner, except intellectual property protection fee is to be allocated using staff time, as this drives the rest of the cost in the department, right? So, and where is the staff time? Staff time is this 30%, right? So what they are actually trying to communicate is that if the total cost is 3875, then out of this 3875, just forget about this 221, because except intellectual property protection fee, right? So just forget about 221, right? Whatever the remaining amount is to be allocated using the staff time, is to be allocated on the basis of this staff time, as this drives the cost in the department. So 3875 minus 221 multiplied by 30% will be for handling inquiries, 30% for this one. So the idea is that you cannot apply this 30% to 3875. This is a wrong strategy. Rather, what you have to do is take 30% of 3875 minus 221, whatever the answer will be, that is supposed to be distributed, right? Okay, so this is an extremely important point, and if you miss this point, probably you will do a very obvious mistake which has been done by number of candidates, right? Let's move forward. Intellectual property protection only applies to each order. Now they are talking about the C note number 2 part, right? Intellectual property protection fee. Intellectual property protection fee only apply to each each order of other container, as plastic orders are standard. It must contain both staff time and the associated fees. Now this is an extremely important point. It must contain, right, both staff time and the associated fees, right? So where is the staff time? It must include staff time and the associated fee, right? So this is something we shall discuss later. Okay, inquiries are in the same proportion as number of orders for plastic and other containers, right? So if there are 13,000 inquiries, and we got 81 or 100 orders, so they are saying that we don't know right now, how many inquiries were for plastic and how many inquiries were for other orders. So they are saying that you may assume that 13,000 is also in the proportion of 6,500 to 1,600, right? Then they are saying handling inquiries. So inquiries is this one, right? Handling inquiries and preparing Handling inquiries and preparing quotes take the same time for each type of the product. So handling inquiries and preparing quotes, so both of these points are actually related to handling inquiries. Now what's next? Next is interesting. um, uh, all orders all orders processed to final design as Greasy manages its client relationship carefully through these processes. Proceed. So they are actually trying to communicate is that if you have accepted an order, it will proceed to final design because Greasy manages its client relationship carefully through these processes. So they are saying that there will be no occasion when we'll receive an order and we'll not process it to the proceed it to the final design. You have to assume whatever order you will accept will ultimately be fulfilled, right? Then they are saying that the processes of initial design, now this is a very important statement, right? Okay. The processes of initial design, this one, initial design, material testing, right? And prototype preparation, material testing and prototype preparation, and final design and final redesign are more complex for other containers and so take 50% longer for each order compared to plastic. And just wait a moment here and try to think what examiner is actually trying to communicate in point number 6. This point. What examiner is actually trying to communicate. Try to pause this video and think. The examiner is saying that, hey, look, now try to focus on this point and this point. They are saying that they are saying that handling inquiries handling inquiries and preparing codes take the same time for each type of the product. So you don't have to worry about this one. But the processes of initial design, material testing, and prototype preparation and final redesign are more complex for other containers. So it will take 50% more time to complete compared with plastic. That means you are supposed to give more cost to other orders rather than plastic. That's basically where activity based costing comes in, right? So that's how, so it means that let's suppose that there are 6,500 orders for plastic and 1,600 orders for other containers. So you have to calculate the equivalency, which means that 6,500 plastic will be multiplied by 1 with 1 because it will take 1 unit time, right? But 1,600 orders of other containers are expected to take 50% more time, right? So this means that these are not 1,600 orders, these are equivalent to 1,600 multiplied by 1.5, whatever the figure is. So this will give you the total number of orders. These are not exactly the number of orders, but this is the equivalency terms if we are converting into activity based costing. So that's basically what we are given in this question. So if you miss point number 6, you will do another most obvious mistake, right? So in the next part, we are going to do this question on Excel because doing it on Word will take a lot of time. So we will do it in Excel. All right. So let me copy all these things in the Excel file and then we will start from there. Okay. All right. So let's just start with the calculation. So first we were supposed to calculate the cost per unit by using absorption costing, right? So in absorption costing, the company was using mm, per unit basis, right? So that's basically what we are supposed to do, right? So overheads per unit will be overhead per unit will be okay. Sorry. Overhead per unit will be total 3 divided by, okay, so we don't have right now, we don't have number of units, right? So let's calculate the total number of units by adding, okay, okay. Units are production or units are, these are, each order have 400,000 units, right? So 400 times 6,500, right? This is for plastic and these are in thousands, right? And then other will be 1600 orders times 187.5, right? So this plus this will give you total number of orders, right? Total number of units, right? So overhead per unit, overheads will be this divided by this, and these are units. Okay, so they are saying at Greasy products costs are discussed in dollars and cents per thousand units. So these are overheads per thousand units, right? Now, for activity-based costing, this is overheads by using traditional absorption costing, right? Traditional absorption costing. Now, if you want to follow same thing by using activity-based costing, how you will do that, right? Let's try to calculate. Let's try to put a heading of ABC, and there are four overheads. The first one is handling inquiries and preparing quotes, right? And then the other one was initial design of packing, right? The third one is material testing and prototype. The third one is final redesign. And the last one is intellectual property, right? So how we are going to distribute these overheads, we have highlighted that you cannot simply charge these percentages based on 37875 because they are saying that the total department costs 3875 except intellectual property protection fee. So obviously you have to deduct this 221 from here, right? So the total will be 3875 minus 221, right? So this is basically considering this point number one, right? Now, the first one is 30% of this cost, right? The second one is 30% of this cost. The third one is 10%, just 10%. Um, Fourth one is 25%, and the last one is 5%. Right. So this is basically the total cost. Now we have to split it between packing and plastic and other, right? But we have to consider one point that so let's just start with this, right? Let's start with the OAR first, right? So overhead absorption rate or overhead recovery rate, ORR, overhead recovery rate will be what? Overhead recovery rate. So overhead recovery rates will be 1096.2 divided by 13. You can divide it with 13, you can divide it with 13,000, up to you, right? We can divide it with simply 13 because the original figure is in thousand. So let's do it in this way, right? So this is number of per order, right? And then the question says that relates to 13,000 inquiries, right? So 13,000 inquiries are here, and they are saying that inquiries are in the same proportion as orders for plastic and containers, right? So this is the point, which is point number three. Inquiries are in the same proportion as orders for plastic and other containers, right? So although these are 13,000 inquiries, and definitely all inquiries were not converted to orders because orders are just 8,100, inquiries are 13,000. So they are saying that number of orders and inquiry number of inquiries are in the same proportion of the number of orders, right? So how many orders are there for plastic and for other, right? So plastic orders are 6,500, its orders are 1,600. So total orders are 6,500 plus 1,600, it's 8,100. Total number of inquiries are 13,000, right? So total number of inquiries for plastic will be 6,500 divided by 8,100. So it's approximately 80% of orders are related to plastic. So the question is saying that since 80% orders are related to plastic, total number of inquiries, 13,000 inquiries, out of 13,000 inquiries, 80% will be related to plastic because it's the same proportion, right? So we can simply multiply this figure with 13,000, right? Similarly, 1,600 divided by 8,100 multiplied by this 13,000, right? So I hope this total will give you 13,000. Yes, it's 13,000, right? So what we can do here is that 84 multiplied by this figure for plastic, right? And then 84 multiplied by this figure for other, right? And then initial design packaging. In initial design packaging, they are saying that the process for initial design material, this last point, the process for initial design, material hand testing, and prototype preparation and final design, because we have already made a design, initial design, and then final redesign, and are more complex, so it will take 50% more time for the others, right? So, which means that if the number of orders are 1,600 for others, um, in terms of all these three heads, it will be around 1.5. It will be 1.5 times 150% time of as compared with the plastic, right? So total number of equivalent time will be this plus this, right? 8,900. So when you calculate the OAR, it will be 1096.2 divided by 8,900, right? And then we'll multiply this with 6,500 for plastic, and we will multiply the same figure with 2,400 for others, right? Because why we are not dividing it with 8,100 despite of the fact that 8,100 orders are here, because it's not saying that it is related to this cost 1096.2 is related to 8,100 orders, but the problem is this 8,100 orders, there are two products in 8,100 orders. One is plastic and the second one is other container. Plastic is going to take less time and other orders are supposed to take more time. So we cannot divide this with 8,100, because if we divide it with 8,100, that means we are assuming that all products require same time. So that's why we have to divide it with 8,900 and then multiply with 65 and 7,400. You cannot divide with 8,100 and multiply with 65 and 2,400. It's basic a problem in mathematics, so it will not work, right? Same goes with material testing. Once one an order is received, so it also depends upon the number of orders. But again, this material testing is going to take more time because this is also included here, right? So this divided by 8,900 multiplied by 6,500, and then this sorry, I think I did not mistake. I directly multiplied with it, right? Okay. So is equals to this multiplied by 6,500 and is equals to this multiplied by 2,400, right? So last one, final design 913.5 divided by 8,900, right? And then 89, this figure will be multiplied by 6,500 and this figure will be multiplied by 2,400, right? Now, The interesting part is the last one, intellectual property. Intellectual property is 5%, right? And that is only applicable to other orders. So is equals to this multiplied by 0.05. Oh, sorry, this is already 5%, right? So this is this plus, but the problem is that they are saying that intellectual property protection only applies to other order containers. That makes sense. We already did that. It must contain both staff time, which is this one, right? This 5%, and the associated fees. Associated fees is this one, 221. So you have to include 182.7 plus 221 as per this note, right? So if you want to sum it up, this is the other, these are the total overheads for other costs, these are the total overheads for plastic, right? Now all these figures are in, mm, are we done with all? Are we missing something? Okay, so what is missing here? 30%, 30%, 10%, 25%, and oh, sorry. There is something. The problem is that these figures are in, not in thousand, right? So okay, now it makes sense. It's 3875. Perfect. So this is basically total overheads, right? Now, okay, now what you have to do, you have to calculate overhead per thousand units, right? We already have overheads per thousand, right? So let's try to calculate overhead. So now there is a basic conversion. mm Because these units are in thousands, this cost is in thousands, right? These costs are in thousands, these units are in thousands. So if you divide this cost with these units, you will get cost per unit because numerator and denominator both are in thousands, right? So it will cancel out the effect, right? So 2614.29 divided by plastic, which is this one, but we don't need a per unit, we need per thousand. So this figure will be multiplied by 1000. Similarly, this divided by others, this will give you per unit cost, and the same figure will be multiplied by 1000. So you will get this one, right? Mm, right. So this means that other cost is going to be around 4.2, but plastic cost is going to be 1.4. This is actually representing what? This is actually representing the amount of difference in terms of cost if we compare activity-based costing with ABC. So this is actually telling you the difference because if we have calculated overheads by using absorption costing, it was 1.33 for both plastic and others, right? This means that this cost was overstated, or we can say that we are charging more to plastic because the actual cost or more appropriate cost is around $1, but we are charging, right, in current system we are charging $1.33 to plastic, right? Other is 4.2, but we are charging to other products, we are charging 1.33, right? So that means what if you, so we have calculated all the details. We have calculated this one as we have identified in our question that um, 1 mark is for the calculation of current method, right? So 1 mark is for the calculation of this one. Then we can assume, because there are a lot of calculations, so we can say 1.5 marks for all. Um, so if you add up all these costs, you will get approximately 7.5 or 8.5. So approximately we can say roughly 9 marks are for this, right? So you have to write for 4 marks, and for 4 marks, what you have to do is you have to calculate and compare overhead per unit and to analyze the results. So what is the analysis? The first point is that overhead of plastic were um, overcharged in absorption while overheads of others were undercharged in traditional absorption costing, right? Now, why this happened? Because in activity-based costing, overheads are allocated on the basis of activities of each product rather than um, one activity level, right? Or we can say there are multiple activity levels in ABC. And as we can see in this question that the other um, containers is taking approximately 50% more time of how many cost drivers? 1, 2, 3, 30, 10, and 25. It's 40, 65%, of 65% of the overheads. Therefore, 50% more cost of all. Therefore, not 50%, don't write 50%. Therefore, high proportion of these overheads were allocated to other containers, right? And then there is one cost which was solely related to others. Mm, Apart from that, intellectual property cost is solely related. Intellectual property cost, which is how much? 403? 403.5 or 403 700, right? Is solely related to other container which was not mm, which had not been highlighted in the traditional absorption costing method, right? So these are 3 to 4 points you need to write. And of course, sorry. So yes, of course, it is, it will be beneficial for the company to use ABC, as clearly there is a huge difference in overheads per unit of both products, right? So we have connected the traditional, that why ABC is more relevant. We have identified few areas. The first one is that We have identified the problem of traditional absorption costing. We have highlighted why ABC is giving different results, considering the 65% of the overheads and considering this 5% cost which is solely related to other one, right? So that's basically the reason why ABC. So the question asks you to calculate, analyze, and compare and analyze. So we have analyzed all these things, and we have also recommended that ABC is making more sense to this company rather than traditional absorption costing, right? So in the next, so now we are going to discuss with its second part, right? All right. So the second requirement in this question is quite simple. The examiner is actually asking you once the comparison, because we are done with the comparison of absorption costing with ABC, and we believe that activity-based costing make more sense in this case. So they are saying once the comparison and analysis of using, sorry, once the comparison and analysis of using ABC for the design department is complete, the CEO wants you now. So from here, the requirement is starting. The CEO wants you to use your analysis to assess the impact of the introduction of ABM on the design department, right? So here the word introduction of ABM is important because company is trying to introduce ABC. It's going to use ABC, activity based management, first time. So probably you need to start with a basic definition of what is activity based management, right? The CEO is especially interested in how this project may impact on the activities and the quality of this department work, right? Now, if you try to recall activity based management, there are two areas of ABM. The first one is we try to apply ABM at a strategic level, and we try to apply ABC at operational level, right? So whenever we try to apply ABC at strategic level, what we need to do is we need to identify value added customers or value added products and non value added customers or products, right? And whenever we apply the same activity based costing in at operational level, what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to identify value added activities and non value added activities, right? So here the question is asking you, the CEO is especially interested in how this project may impact on the activities, like what kind of activities we should continue, what kind of activities we can discontinue, where we can save costs, what are essential, what are non-essential. So examiner is actually interested, so CEO is actually interested in identifying all these things and the quality of this department work, how ABM can be used to improve the quality of this particular department, right? So that's basically what examiner is actually interested in. Now the problem is with this type of question is that there are just three lines written here, and now you need to do everything at your own. Like you need to connect this theory of this little bit theory of activity based management with the scenario, with a given scenario. Now for that we need to go back to appendix number 1, because appendix number 1 is something where we can identify a lot of things, right? So first of all, let's try to identify value added activities and non value added activities. So I'm trying to use a different color here, right? So they are starting with handling, sorry, they are starting with handling inquiries, right? Handling inquiries, let me try to make it a bit clear. Okay, so they are starting with handling inquiries and preparing quotations for potential orders, right? So this is kind of work which they are doing for those customers which are not companies customers right now, because they are potential customers. So basically this 30% of your overall cost is spent on inquiries and quotations, right? Because we are dealing with inquiries, we are dealing with quotations, we are providing them quotations specifically for other work, and for the standard order. So now the question is this a value added activity or not? Do you really think it's a value added activity? Yes, for with respect to other products, other containers, which is more customized, it's a very important thing, because you need to understand the requirements of customers, and then you need to act accordingly. You need to charge them accordingly. So for others, which is more customized, this handling inquiries definitely makes sense, because it's a value added product, because unless and until you don't understand, you won't be able to code them properly, and of course you won't be able to charge a good price from them. So for others, definitely it is, right? What about plastic? What about plastic container? What kind of container was plastic? Plastic was a standard product, right? Because it's a standard product, we can reduce the cost here, but we cannot eliminate, because of course this is a value added activity, right? So what we can write here is that yes, handling inquiries and preparing codes are extremely important. That is soaking up 30% of cost. That is basically 30% of the total cost. For others, it definitely makes sense, because it's an extremely important to understand what is the requirement of customers. But for plastic, it may be reduced to certain extent, because it's a standard product. It's not a customized product. Well established market is there, so we can reduce the cost. So for plastic, there we can reduce the cost, but for other, if you reduce the cost, that means maybe you need to compromise on the quality. You may get compromise on the qualities, which definitely customer company doesn't want, right? Initial design of package, right? Now, initial design of packaging is extremely important, because this is a kind of prototype probably, which the company is sending to the customers. So still there is not much cost has been spent here, right? Material testing and prototype preparation, yes, this is important. This is a value added activity. Final redesign. Now final redesign is something which can be a debatable activity, because again, final redesign can be something which is required for the other product, right? Because other product are customized. So once we send our design to the customers, the prototype design to the customer, maybe customer wants some other things to be improved. So yes, final redesign is something which is definitely, which can be a value added activity for um, others final redesign. But final redesign is something which can be reduced for plastic, because plastic is a simple product, that is a well established product. So probably we don't need to spend much here, but still this cannot be classified as a non value added activity. So this is something which definitely company needs. Now the last point is intellectual property protection. Now what do you mean by intellectual property protection? In this case needs to be addressed, because nothing about that is given here. Only the thing which is only given here is that this is something which is related to other orders. So we need to understand that whether intellectual property protection really need here, and if it is needed, then yes, it's a value added activity, because we don't know what kind of intellectual property we are protecting. One thing, so overall, it seems that all the activities are apparently value-added activities. So, but where there are certain areas where we can reduce the cost, where customization is not required. So we can reduce the cost, but we cannot eliminate any of these activities. We cannot say that okay, fine, this activity is not required, right? Uh, so this is something which is related to operational activity based management. Now at a strategic level, we need to identify value added customers and non value added customers. So in this case, it's extremely, because see, if you are distributing this cost of 403,000 that was on Excel, if you are distributing 403 or 407,000 costs to others, then it's extremely important to for the company to communicate to these customers that look, this is the extra cost which company is bearing, or the company is bearing extra overheads for other container, because these are those containers which are non-plastic and company needs to do a lot of effort for that. So message should be given to the customers they need to pay more price for the premium product, for a sustainable product, for a premium product, for something which they can recycle. So they have to pay more, right? And this is something which it should be charged, which should be charged from the customer. That is something which they pay. And in case they don't pay, that means this product will not be that profitable. So the point is this cost should be charged from other customers, and something should be communicated to them that look, they have to pay, right? So this requirement was sorry, I didn't read the requirement. So this requirement was of 7 marks. So how we dealt with the 7 marks, uh, we have one, two, three, four, five activities, right? For all those activities, we started with what is value based management. Oh, sorry, what is activity based management? What are strategic and operational? We need to identify value added activities, non value added activities, and for value added activities, we need to give a reason why all these activities are value added activities, and then we need to switch to activity based management strategic level, where customers are there. And for customers side, we need to write here that look, this is something which is extremely important for company to charge from a specific customer, to convince them that look, this is a cost which company is bearing just because of your order, and you are someone who is going to bear that cost. So that's most important thing. So that's how activity based management can be useful for the company, right? So that's it for this question. It's a good question specifically for the calculation sides, because students don't expect much calculation at APM level. So this was a kind of question which students were not so comfortable with, right?